Hey everyone, it's Honorée Corder, and I am thrilled to be back on the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast with Jan Ilunga.
This is episode 177, and today we talk about why you must write a book. Here we go.
Welcome to the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast, the show for entrepreneurs and small business owners who dream big and want to do bigger. Join some of the world's top entrepreneurs, internet marketers, and best-selling authors as they share their inspiring stories, their struggles, and give actionable tips that will help you build, grow, and promote your online business. Here's your host, Yanni Lunga.
Hey there, how's it going? Welcome. And today's episode is for you. If you have been thinking about writing a book, or even if you haven't thought about that at all, because I'm sure that by the time you are done with today's interview, you're gonna be like, I think I should start working on my book right now. And joining us today is actually a returning guest of the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast. She was here with us a few months ago, if not even a year ago, I think. And I'm talking about best-selling author, book marketing expert, Honorée Corder. The show notes for today's episode are over at yannilunga.com/episode 177. All right, here is the interview with Honorée Corder from honoreecorder.com. Hey everybody, today we have the second returning guest here on the podcast. The first one was Jason Zook, and who's joining us today. I'm so excited, not only because she's back, but also about the topic we're going to be talking about, and because she has kind of changed things a little bit since last time she was here. And I think it was maybe last summer, so about a year ago. She's an entrepreneur, a coach, and best-selling author of almost 20 books, I think 19, if I remember correctly. She was on the show before, as I said, and we talked about how to apply relationship rules to business for ultimate success. She has been helping Hal Elrod to expand the Miracle Morning book series, and now she helps entrepreneurs, speakers, and authors share their expertise by writing a book and prosper as an author. And she has a new book coming out October 1st called You Must Write a Book, and we're going to hear more about that in a second. I'm thrilled to welcome back on the podcast Honorée Corder. Honorée, how's it going?
Fantastic. How is it going with you?
I'm pumped that you're back, and as I was saying, it's fun to be talking to you again, and is interesting that I see that since we last spoke, you have done quite many things, right?
Yes, I keep myself busy, that's for sure.
Yeah. I know you do, and I know that you like what you do, so I think it's always nice to be busy when one loves what one does, right?
Yes, I don't consider anything I do work.
Nice, yeah. Same here. So I so know what you mean. Okay, Honorée. So I said it the last time we spoke, we talked about applying relationship rules to business for ultimate success in episode 40. And I said that you have been part of the Miracle Morning, let's call it expansion, because now there's been the Miracle Morning. Was it for real estate agents, for writers, or something like that also?
Yes, writers, network marketers, salespeople, and we have a new one coming out. By the time this airs, probably the Miracle Morning for Parents and Families will be out, and the Miracle Morning Art of Affirmations coloring book.
Nice. So it's, as I said, the Miracle Morning series, ecosystem, community is really growing, and I know you are definitely one of the movers and shakers of the community. And I said that you've also have shifted things a bit, and there is also a post on your blog where you kind of made the announcement that were changing things a little bit. And if you don't mind me asking, could you share with us some of the things kind of that made you decide to shift a little bit in your business? Because I know that maybe people here with you and I, Honorée, who may be in a similar situation and they're thinking, okay, should I kind of stay where I am? Should I change things?
Yeah, so I have been business and executive coaching for a really long time, 15 years. And sometimes you're ready to go, and sometimes it's time for you to go, right? Depending upon what situation you're in. And I had one last institutional client. So many clients, 15 people that I was working with. And right when I had decided, okay, I'm done last year, actually, they came back with, we have some more people for you to work with.
Of course.
Right. And so you might have heard the saying, make hay while the sun is shining.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, okay, it's only 6 more months. And so I will do that. But my heart had really shifted to helping professionals monetize their knowledge in multiple ways. I think one of the challenges with being a service professional or someone who sells something is that you are tied to your time. You're trading time for money. And I like to expand people's consciousnesses into multiple streams of income. And one of the ways that I've done that myself is to publish lots of books. And so as I started sharing some of myself with my clients, they would say, I've always wanted to write a book. Could you help me with that? And that became part of our coaching. And pretty soon then people were calling me and saying, hey, I see what you're doing with Hal. I want to write a book too. And I don't want to figure it out. I have more, I have less time than money at this point, right? And I recognize the value of having someone guide me through that process. And so when that last contract came to an end, I was very excited because now all of the people that I work with are writing books, are in the process of writing books and developing courses and creating multiple streams of income from their knowledge and from their books.
I love it. I mean, I know that you're a professional, so I'm sure that you rocked those last 6 months, but I'm sure it feels differently to work now, huh?
It was interesting because they came back to me and said, we actually want to expand our coaching within the company. And I said, oh, yay. So what does that look like? And we had several meetings. And at the end of the day, they were needing more than I had the capacity to give, even if I was willing to be full-time, I did nothing else. If I stopped working with Hal. And so they were sad and I was delighted, but I had to pretend to be a little sad. So I was calling everyone going, I'm free. Right. And they're like, are you sure? And absolutely. So yes, every day now is absolutely my own day. And I'm getting so much more done. I'm doing a lot more writing. I only work with a small number of people, and so I can give them time and attention. As a matter of fact, right before this interview, I had a client who said, I just need 5 minutes of your time. Can you help me with something? And I had the time up until that point, when I let go of my last, official business coaching clients, every minute of every day was taken. And so I would have said, oh gosh, I can call you while I eat lunch, or I could call you at the end of the day. But this is provided and allowed me to have a lot more fun and flexibility in my day, which I enjoy very much.
Nice. No, it's nice to hear because it is important to have that in our professional life. And you said something, Honorée, that I thought it was very interesting, and I think is really gold for everybody who's here with you and I. And you said that you help professionals, first of all, kind of understand that the importance of building different revenue streams, and then you kind of create plans in order, you lay out the foundations for building those income streams. So for everybody who's here with you and I, can you take a second to kind of share your thoughts on why it's important, in your opinion, not to have all our eggs in one basket?
Well, I think the world is changing very quickly. And I think someone's world and each individual person's world can change very quickly. I have in my coaching practice for, I guess, 17 or 18 years, seen just about everything that could possibly happen. I have had, just things going upside down. So I worked with a law firm for a very long time, and one partner was convicted of embezzling money and the firm went out of business. So imagine the other attorneys that were working in that firm. They had to go find new jobs. Their, 401ks were disrupted. I've had people go through divorces and lose children and spouses and parents to death. I've had just catastrophic events happen. Businesses come and go. marriages come and go,
Mhm.
places where people live come and go. And so when you have all of your eggs in one basket and you're relying on that basket, then there's very little room for upset. And when you combine
Right.
that with the general lack of fiscal responsibility, let's say, most people don't take a nice hefty portion of their income and set it aside for a rainy day. When this upset does come, they're woefully unprepared. And so I have been kind of the Jiminy Cricket on people's shoulders saying, live underneath your means, set money aside, let that money grow so that and not as a war chest, not preparing for war, but I call it an opportunity chest.
I think,
So when you lose your, when you, like, for example, I have a friend of mine who was unquestionably wrongfully accused of sexual harassment. So he went through this long legal battle, cost him hundreds of thousands of dollars, which he won. He was able to prove that he was innocent, but he lost his job, he lost his income. But he had been fiscally conservative and had put a bunch of money away. And so when all of that was over, he could take a breath and look for his next opportunity. He wasn't coming from a place of fear. So part of what I work with my clients on is saying, put yourself in a really positive cash position so that you can capitalize on opportunities. And should you need it, have a place to take a breath for a minute when the unthinkable happens. And then I also talk to them about taking their knowledge and turning it into other revenue streams, such as books or courses or workbooks or coaching or training or workshops, weekends, right? They're all podcasts. They're all different things that can be done. And so then they're not relying on that one check every 2 weeks, right? They're receiving money in different forms, in different amounts every single day.
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you, first of all, Honorée, for sharing that with us. And I think a couple of examples you made are really on point. And I think it's also important to keep things in mind, because sometimes we put not only all of our eggs in one basket, but even in somebody else's basket. So if we think about online businesses, for example, maybe we say, okay, our main core or flagship course is on a third-party platform. And then the company decides to shut down the platform, or they change business model or whatever. And then we have maybe to start again from scratch. And I mean, we have seen recently in the live video streaming world, platforms like Blab shutting down, Google Hangouts shutting down. So those are just examples, but it's important to keep in mind that those things actually happen. So as you said, it's better to always be prepared. And I mean, I said it, and you also touched it now, that one of the ways professionals, entrepreneurs, marketers, speakers can share their expertise and monetize their expertise and knowledge is by writing a book. So obviously, it's true that nowadays it's so easy to write a book. I mean, if we go on a place like Amazon, we can find books about everything, really. But at the same time, that also means that there is competition. So it's important that if we decide to write a book, we do a great job. So, Honorée, the first question I have for you when it comes to this aspect is, why do you think every professional who's here with you and I should think about writing a book?
Well, there are several reasons that I believe every professional should write a book. Most importantly, and they're all most important, but most importantly, having a book is the no-brainer way to say, I am the expert. I am the person that you should hire. When we run around to networking events and we meet people and they say, oh, can I have a card? When your answer is, oh, no, I'm all out of cards, but I do have a copy of my book if you'd like it.
Right.
The average person is still blown away and excited by the fact that you are an author and that you've written a book. And in that book contains your knowledge, your expertise, your experience, and your personality. And people get a chance to get to know you. And it erases any doubt that you are the expert. You are the person that they should hire. So while the guy next to you is handing a business card, you can be handing them a book. And that just kind of, the hashtag for that is winning.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Winning big.
Yes, exactly. So a book really kind of gives you an entry point into places and opportunities to meet people that you would probably not otherwise get a chance to meet. It is a replacement, not just for a business card, but for a brochure or even a website, because it really can be, and I don't mean this in the awful way that it sounds, I mean it in the best possible way. It's a sales pitch, right? When you are the expert and you're offering products and services, a book can be a way for you to help your potential client recognize how important it is to have a financial plan, an estate plan, the proper CPA or attorney, right? So those are just a few of the reasons.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Honorée, for sharing those with us. And I mean, you said it. There are a few reasons, but I like the fact that you talked about the authority building aspect of writing a book, because I think that that's something that kind of it's. Once we write the book, once our book is ready to go, automatically we build authority. So it doesn't really matter. Obviously, the number of sales of a book does matter, but in terms of authority building, once our book is available to the world, we immediately kind of get that author tag or label, and we get that authority, as you said. And I mean, as I said, there is quite a competition, though, and we had a few episodes here in the past where we talked about different aspects related to self-publishing, so I'll make sure to link to those. But in your experience, Honorée, maybe also thinking about some of your clients or colleagues of yours, do you have advice for getting started with writing a book? I mean, that in itself could be a topic for an entire week worth of content, but still.
Well, so from the production side of it, that you want to make sure that you have a quality product. From the actual writing and getting started from the writing, in You Must Write a Book, I walk people through the process of identifying the problem that their book will solve, identifying the avatar, also known as the ideal client, the person that they're talking to in the book. So you are, as a professional, talking to people all the time, and you are most likely repeating yourself all the time because you are getting the same problems or questions, that your ideal clients are experiencing. So you take that knowledge and you put that in your book, and you're answering it for everyone from a general perspective, right? Obviously, everyone is special and requires their own unique insight and advice. But beginning to write the book is, what are the problems that you are encountering, or what are the problems that your clients are encountering, or what are the questions that you get most often when you're talking to your clients? And then how do you advise that they solve those problems and walk them through in your book how to solve those problems? Then from the production side, it is, when you talk about competition, I agree and disagree that there is a lot of competition. There are, without question, a lot of books being written and published. However, there are a lot of crappy books being written and published. and not even crappy in content sometimes. And I can think of one specific example of someone who's a beautiful writer and yet absolutely refused to take my advice and get a beautiful cover for their book. And so the book is languishing on Amazon and is not selling, because you do judge a book by its cover. You do want something that compels someone to pick up the book. You want a wonderful title for the book, and you want a wonderful image or graphics for the book. You want the look and feel and read of your book to be as professional as you can possibly produce. And I know people come up against financial limitations, and my answer to that is, then we'll wait. Wait until you can afford to do it right, because you can't unring the bell. Right. Once the toothpaste is out of the tube, you can't shove it back in there and pretend like it didn't happen. And I know that from personal experience, because I wrote and published my first book, which is now Ashes, because I didn't title it correctly. I didn't get a graphic designer to do the cover. I didn't have the book edited. I didn't know what I didn't know. And this was in 2004. And so when I met a real bona fide professional New York published author who said, wow, you have beautiful prose, but this looks awful. And he used a stronger word.
Yeah, I bet he did.
And he did me a tremendous favor, and I have a pretty thick skin. And so I didn't take it to mean that I should just take my bat and my ball and go home and never write another book. So I went back to the drawing board and I retitled the book, and I got a professional designer and paid for it. And I got a professional layout person and paid for that. And I got an editor and paid for that. And so I was, in the hole as we do, right? When we're launching a business and your book is your business or a portion of your business, it's an expense you're investing. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, it's an investment that will come back to you in spades if it's done correctly. And so that first book, I had printed a few hundred copies and ended up having a bonfire with them. The second version of my first book, I've sold probably 200,000 copies over the last decade or so of that book. And then I released the updated version, or the 10th anniversary edition of that book last year, and absolutely worth all of the investment. But I had to take a step back and get some good advice and walk through the steps and make sure that someone would even read my book. And every so often now I will be somewhere and someone will bring to me their very poorly self-published book and thrust it into my hands and go, "So what do you think?" And I don't punch them in the nose like I was, because that doesn't feel good. And I don't want someone to quit when they've gone to all the effort. But I do say what I'm looking for in a quality book is a quality cover. Can you see where this could have some improvement? And your copy on the back cover needs to be a little bit more professional. And you really do need to go through the editing process with someone for whom their job is an editor. Right? It's not someone who's an English teacher that lives 3 doors down. It's someone who on their tax return, they put editor. That's their job. And you're going to pay for all of those things. But dare I say, it's a really good investment in your product, which just happens to be a book.
Yeah, so much gold, Honorée, in what you just shared with us. And I think, you stressed it. We do judge a book by its cover. And the same applies to podcasts. I know how many times I've been on iTunes and I skip a podcast simply because from the cover, I'm like, the cover looks amateurish. Probably the content is going to be amateurish too. But as you said, the example of the client of yours, the content itself is great, but because of the kind of poorly designed book cover, I dare to say so, that then has an impact on people, not purchasing or the book not selling a lot. And you said that you do help professionals. How many books have you written as of today, Honorée?
You Must Write a Book is number 20, and I have helped Hal produce 6 in the Miracle Morning book series. We just haven't released the last 2 of them yet. So we have 26.
Crazy. Okay, so you have written and have been involved in the production of 26 books. And not only you provide people with the advice in your coaching, but you also, as we said, you have the new book coming out called You Must Write a Book, Why Every Professional Must Write a Book, and exactly how to write a great one. So, Honorée, I think the title is super self-explanatory, but still, can you take a moment to tell us more about what You Must Write a Book is about?
Yes. So it's not just writing the book, but it's how to write it and how to produce a quality product. And I go all the way from what's the concept. So what is the concept? What is the problem that you solve, or what is the solution that you give, or both in your book? How do you identify those? And then how do you produce a quality product? And then how do you use it to make money, right? So there are a couple of different sections in there. One is marketing your book. So you want to sell your book, and then it's marketing, marketing with your book. So marketing the other things that you sell with your book as your business card. And I talk about some of the different ways I've done that. And then also, turning that book into multiple streams of income. So in the internet marketing world, it's known as repurposing your content, right? So you can take a very simple example of Tony Robbins, where he had Awaken the Giant Within the book. And then I went to Unleash the Power Within the weekend and realized that it was the book in live format. So it's
Right.
it's repurposed content. And then we can go a step further and realize that Personal Power and Personal Power 2 were Awaken the Giant Within and Unleash the Power Within in audio format. And so you can repurpose your content for your book content into different things. You can give speeches or presentations. You can develop a course or a companion guide or a workbook or a journal or a coaching program, right? There are so many things that one can take their book content and turn it into.
Well, I mean, I think what you just touched on, Honorée, it's so critical because let's stick with a simple example of having a book and repurpose it into an audiobook. If somebody doesn't like reading and you only have a book, you won't reach that person. On the other hand, if you have an audiobook version and they do listen to audiobooks, you're going to be able to reach them and turn them into customers. So that's definitely something you can do. And you said it. I mean, there are many different things we can do to repurpose the content. We can focus on a specific section of the book. We can repurpose the entire book. That really is up to us. And in this last couple of minutes, Honorée, I want to ask you for a few prosperity tips for authors. You already touched a little bit on passant in this last answer, because maybe there is somebody who already has a book out there and is like, well, okay, I kind of have gone already through the writing, the publishing phase. So I have my book out there. So do you have any tips on how the authors who are here with you now can prosper from their books?
Yes. So market more aggressively. Well, let me take a step back and say I would have to ask them the question, what do they want from their book? Why did they write their book? Right. So that would be a kind of a question. Do they want to market their book or do they want to market with their book? And those are two different conversations. And sometimes they lead to one big conversation because they want both. They want to make money from their book. And you hit the nail on the head, right? Have a paperback, have a hardcover if you can, have the ebook available and in all formats, and also an audiobook if you're able to do that. And have that also professionally done. And that's a totally different conversation. The audiobook market is completely different from paperback and ebook. So having that. So I would want to know what somebody wanted from their book. But if they wanted to sell more books, then sell more books. Give them away. Seed the market. Get people to review your book on Apple and Amazon, because there's nothing like third-party validation to make your book popular, right? Give it away to people who have platforms who might be willing to read it and or endorse it. Go on podcasts. Do as many podcast interviews and radio show interviews and television interviews and print interviews and blog posts, that you can possibly do. Get your name and your face and your book's cover. Your face is your book's cover in a way, right? It represents you. Get that out there as much as possible. If you're looking to market with your book, that's kind of a separate conversation. And I'm happy to talk about that for a minute if you'd like.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to.
Certainly. So we talked about business dating the last time I was on, and in there I have a tool called the 12 by 12, and that is the 12 different categories of professionals that you interface with in order to grow your business. So for example, an estate planning attorney and a divorce attorney might have the same client, and they could use, if the estate planning attorney had a book, they could give it to the divorce attorney and vice versa. So when someone comes into their office and says, oh, I'm getting a divorce, they could say, oh, my colleague Joe wrote this book on divorce, and pass it on to the prospective client. So I recommend identifying who your strategic partners are and then giving copies of your book to your strategic partners for them to pass on to prospective clients for you. And that's just one strategy, right? But it's getting your book in the hands of as many people as possible, and considering the low cost of a book. It's worth it for you to give out as many books as you possibly can. I never hesitate to just pass my book on to someone shamelessly. Shamelessly. What do you do for a living? Oh, I'm an author. Do you read? What do you I always ask, are you a reader? Yes. What do you read? Do you prefer fiction or nonfiction? Do you read business nonfiction? Oh, great. Well, I have a few of those books. Is there any one of them that you would like?
Honorée, sorry, I have to interrupt you because what you just said, I think is very very, very powerful, because I think that 9 out of 10 authors, they say, I have a book, buy it, here it is, or here's a copy, here you go. But instead, you take the moment to ask a few questions about the person. You try to get to know a little bit more about them. And then if, their answers are the kind of answers you're hoping for, then you kind of, quote unquote, make the pitch or pass the book. So it's nice.
Yeah, so I just recently went on an excursion with my husband. We're shopping for kind of a high ticket item, and the salesman said, what do you do? What books do you write? And I said, I write nonfiction business books. I said, are you a reader? And he said, voracious. And I said, what do you read? And he said, fiction and nonfiction. I read every night before bed. And so we were in his office, and I said, do you mind if I look at your books? And so we started talking about books, and I said, well, I have a couple in my car if you'd like them. And I went out, and he said, I'm going to have a fanboy moment. I have a Sharpie. Would you sign my books? And it was a lovely moment, because I didn't feel like I was like, here you go, here's all my books. Because when you're giving your book to someone, you're asking for 2 hours of their time or more per book. You're asking for someone to take their most precious asset, commodity, whatever, and give it to you for free. No one says, here, read my book and bill me the 2 hours that it takes you to read it. Right. So it's really having some awareness and asking good questions before you give someone your book. But once I've established that someone is a reader and they do want a copy of my book, I am happy to give them a copy.
Nice. No, that's nice. And do you have any other market with your book tip before we wrap it up?
I leave my books in the reading libraries at Starbucks. So the little newspaper basket where people can put their used newspapers. I just drop a copy of my book in the Starbucks, specifically my books on divorce, because people generally, when they're going through a divorce, go to Starbucks with their friend and commiserate. And so I leave my books in there. And I've had a number of people call or email me and say, I found your book in a Starbucks and the timing was divine. And so just think outside the box when it comes to marketing with your book. Think about where your reader, also known as your target client, is going to hang out and put your books there. Leave your book in locations that people might stumble upon them, and it might be just the blessing they need at that moment.
Love it. Love the Starbucks book marketing tip. And I mean, there is also something that to keep in mind, that maybe somebody's like, well, Honorée, Jan, I'm in a country where we don't have Starbucks, or my ideal clients is on the other side of the globe. But you also share a couple of tips on things we can do regardless of where we are, that are strategic partnerships, doing creating free content, so blog posts, podcast interviews, and things like that. And obviously, there is more gold advice in Honorée Corder's new book. You must write a book. Why every professional must write a book, and exactly how to write a great one. You find the link to the book, to the previous interview with Honorée, to her Amazon author page, her site, Honorée Corder, in the show notes. And to wrap it up, Honorée, I have to ask you, if somebody has maybe a question or want to give you a shout out or maybe they would like to work with you, how can they get in touch with you? What is the quickest way to do that?
Just go to honoreecorder.com. Just go to my website, and there's a contact page on there, and we can go from there.
Perfect. So honoreecorder.com, the contact form. And again, look in the show notes. You're going to find the links to everything Honorée Corder and I have covered there in the show notes. Honorée, thank you so much for being back on the show, and congrats on the launch of your new book. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you so much. I'll get a copy over to you.
And we are back. Honorée, thank you so much for being back here on the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast, and for sharing your expertise and telling us more about your new book, You Must Write a Book. And you heard it, the book is almost here. October 1st, make sure to put that on your calendar. And also make sure to check out the show note page over at yanilunga.com/episode 177, where you're going to find the links to everything Honorée and I have talked about, including the link to our very first interview. All right, this is it for today. Next week, we're gonna talk about a brand new topic here on the show, and that's Snapchat. Take care and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast. For more tips and tools, head over to www.janilunga.com.